Hello, it's Vision Denial. I'm Sam. Yeah, that's about it. And we are in the road to MSI 2022. This is week 4, or technically week 3, episode 4, though, of this series for this year. Couple of things to note. The PCS and the LPL had to delay some of their schedules, the LPL especially, who currently seem to be slating their finals to the 24th of April as of the last I checked today. So it'll be on the same day as the LCS finals. Take that as a note of what's going on regarding things internationally. That said, a lot of good games have gone on, including where we start off as the only LPL game that I've been able to watch for the weekend is the only one that is played during the entire week at this point, as they're not seeming to go back until the 12th of April. We are the 8th of April. I have been able to go over as much, and I forgot to mention, if you're new here, the Road to MSI is where every playoff season I go through all of the playoff games from every region. Yes, including that one. So all 11 regions that are going to be participating in MSI, I go through their playoffs every single game and take an analysis out of it. I like it. It's a good, fun time. And this series, I do a brief synopsis of all of them and give my final thoughts, of which the series that I've covered so far for the last couple of ones go from the beginning, from March 18th till the 30th. In this episode, we're going to be including March 31st, April 1st, April 2nd, and 5 of the 7 playoff series that happened on April 3rd. To give you perspective, that is 17 best of 5s. That whole weekend is densely packed. A lot of things happen. With that, without further ado, let's get into our first series. We got JD Gaming versus Weibo Gaming of the LPL. And just as a forward note, I will be mentioning now the regions of all of these teams just to help to give it off. So, very close series played within margins of errors that happened way too often. Too many margins of errors. I gotta say that Weibo Gaming was way better approaching leads and keeping them, but the inconsistent vision and lack of attempts to aim for scaling, when that's exactly what they drafted, really hurt some of their endgame plays. Now, neither team showed a strong approach to ending games either, other than resorting to some of the neutral setups. JDG, on the other hand, had an incredible set of early game neutrals, better than most teams I've seen at this point. That would not translate properly to any of the other stages of the game. And even then, when played to that direction, it would hurt the draft condition they had picked up. Yeah, Gao and Kanavi had the highest ups and downs of this series for JDG, but I have to commend 369, who was put on so many different options across the series and played them all, mostly, we won't talk about the Kale, to the best his team needed. If they want to play bot side, do more to lift up Hope so that he can carry it, so he can carry like it worked out in Game 5. And doing so, I can see this team being pretty solid contender in MSI. Outside of that, not enough consistency for me to be convinced. Next, we get Deep Cross Gaming versus Beyond Gaming. And apparently the PCS changed because I thought these were going to be best of 3s. No matter what. More games for me. Now, something tells me that these two teams are not likely to make MSI. As the 4th and 5th seed of this region, these teams showed a solid understanding of the drafts, but not necessarily how to apply their win conditions. Now, a good idea of where to put leads early, but not how to use them late. And that drakes and neutrals are important for scaling, but only rush them. These two teams are excellent team fighters in a region where team fighting is the specialty. Is, nothing to scoff at. Now, regardless of the gold lead, small advantages were found at any given point, but that's the thing. Either team could get an 8K lead and not use it to play the side lanes or force difficult decisions. Now, Hana is for sure a standout for the way he navigated team fights alongside Krakata. And Wacko is a madman who plays too far forward, but when it works, it looks great. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if these two teams made the rematch in the lower bracket, as I know the first two seeds tend to be a much higher quality in this region. Next, we go to... Oh, I forgot to mention. This is Deep Cross Gaming and Beyond Gaming from the PCS. Or I did think I did mention that. Yeah, the PCS changed. I did mention this. Next, we go to... We're sticking to the PCS in Southeast Asia, where we got the CBTC Flying Oysters, formerly of Machi Esports, versus MFT or Meta Falcon team. And what an incredibly one-sided game. Now, I don't think Meta Falcons can make it back from the losers bracket to win the whole thing. Not a chance. The difference in skill bot side, the reliance on 365 and Taco to make plays, and their decision making often losing them pressure, and how they were reactive and slow as gold passively bled out. The Flying Oysters, on the other hand, had so much going for them. Ballooning gold lead passively, solid dives, decent neutral setups. The only inconsistent thing is the use of vision, and moments where Koala and Rest are too far forward in random moments. But as the third seed of the PCS, or usually only the first two seeds are super exciting, this is really good from them. And it gets me more excited for how the first and second seed are expected to play. And I have zero confidence on how seeds 4 through 8 are going to manage facing any of them. They're eliminated from contention in my head of even possibly making it. But I would be remiss to say, because this is so one-sided, I really want to see what it looks like when they go up against the two higher seeds. Next, we head to the LPL for the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming versus Burning Core. So, I can't believe how slow these games start, and also how quickly they end. Now, there's something to be said about proper setup, good vision, and solid engage tool, but you won't find them in this series. Burning Core, for the most part, plays with proactivity, but it's incredibly shy, while the Soft Hawks mostly play reactively. And while those traits alone wouldn't be a problem, it does when it starts showing, the opposite. Like being shy to no longer shy. It's just... The Soft Hawks on proactive plays regularly attempted to either punish or pick using flanks, causing them to lose the game frequently. And by all means, these are some solid flanks they were attempting, but the disjointed coordination merged with the fact that the reaction time out of Burning Core is incredible. Very good reaction times out of them. tell me that SoftHawks should have chosen a different approach? But they didn't, and ended up flanking to death mostly. Now, while DICE and Flawless seem to keep a hold on everything, they are often found mispositioning, slowing down any momentum they could have held. So far, none of the teams from the lower bracket of the Japanese LJL have shown something promising. And I'm hoping the upper bracket of DFM versus Sengoku Gaming have something else to give. Because so far, not a good sign. Next, we get to Europe, where we get G2 versus Vitality. And what a crazy game 3. And honestly, it is good to see moments where G2 could play from behind and find smart macros decisions to get back. Vitality, that was a good set of series that you played, but my goodness, did some of the choices you made really did it for you. Now, I don't fault you fully on the steals. The steal for Soul, I do. You had Smite, and Cap should not have gotten away from that. I don't know how he did. G2 had such a solid read on their own win conditions and how to approach each step of the game, while Vitality seemed a little slower on playing to what they drafted. Now, criticism from both mid lanes. How do I put this? Coin flip style of play is not my favorite, and both Caps and Perks have always been a sore spot for me. Now, both of them would make or break plays alone, making it hard for me to see the other players and their contributions to something concrete on first watch, which is a shame because Labrov has slowly become a season favorite for me, and Flacket and Broken Blade play with leads so well and use them to their limits, and Carzzy is a delight to watch. But when the games are made or broken by your mid laners being in the wrong spot, it feels kind of bad. Now, G2 face off against Misfits, and where I think this might be a great series, and I want to see Caps be a bit more consistent, just an incy bit more. Next, we head to the LCK Finals. The Finals, where T1 versus Gen G, and congratulations to T1 on being the first team to qualify for MSI 2022. Now, Gen G, you put up a good fight in Game 2. And that's about it. Game 4 really summarized my issues with the team as a whole, and while T1 isn't free of criticism, Gen G decided to round out that comp that they had with an Akshan and Yumi, reducing their map presence to 0. And while drafting around Chovy or Ruler, or while still not drafting around Chovy or Ruler, all of that on top of the hyper focus on some plays, the inability to move your leads to where they needed to go, and the difficulty to end games made it so hard for me to believe that they even would come close to winning the series. Now, Game 2, like I mentioned, showed that T1 isn't unbeatable. But no one was really under that impression. Granted, I did expect T1 to go through the series 3-0. But T1 really needs to, push back on limit testing and respect their opponents a little bit more. Because a team that can develop a 1.5k lead at 6 minutes from laning phase and 0 kills doesn't need the same kind of troubleshooting most other teams do. And I'm here left, thinking unless a team goads them with nonstop fighting and plays with the tempo, I don't think any of the emerging regions, let alone any of the legacy representatives, will be able to keep up with T1. This team is terrifying, and just how quickly they balloon leads, take advantage of any mistake, and close games. This is the favorites of the tournament before any other team has qualified. Also, Carry is a monster this year. So, coming out of the LCK is T1. Let's see what the other regions have got to bring. Next, we head back to the PCS in Southeast Asia for Frank Esports versus Meta Falcon Team. And there isn't anything particularly spectacular about Frank Esports. But at least they draft to their strengths, they stick to the draft conditions, and they draft simple. Frank had spotty vision and inconsistent neutral setups, but played 1-4 setups well, and team fight even better. And again, from a region known for its team fighting, that's pretty solid. Out of the bottom 5 teams from the PCS, this has been the strongest showing. But versus the top 3, it could be a problem. Now, Meta Falcon team have big ambitions, but not much in execution. Some good vision while ahead doesn't help the poor macro choices or misplayed team fights or skirmishes. There's a lot of work for Meta Falcon team if it comes summer. If it comes summer, they want a shot at playoffs again, let alone Worlds. Up next, we head to Turkey in the TCL for Galatasaray versus Dark Passage. Now, the slow nature and patient play from Galatasaray isn't helped by their lack of vision and rushed neutrals. Now, Dark Passage did attempt on multiple occasions to find early game options and up the tempo, but outside of Game 3, they couldn't do much. And Galatasaray benefited a lot from misallocation of time and gold, where Skorth was frequently ignored for most of the series, and they didn't play to their win conditions, and any leads developed by Galatasaray were easier to navigate. Now, granted, Galatasaray didn't look to navigate deficits very well, and with their approach to vision being weak, I can see any other comp with early leads being the ticket for whoever faces Galatasaray in the finals. But seeing that this is a team that develops lead from laning phases and balloons them efficiently, it'll be more of a matter of who gets the early leads and pushes them first. Next, we head to Europe for the LEC, where we get to the winners semifinals, where Rogue versus FNatic. Now, it's the first reverse sweep of the season, and honestly, it was really good to see how quickly Rogue adapted, and pretty bad how FNatic adapted. Playing 3 losing games of Jinx, Viego, and Twisted Fate? Really? I'm also baffled on how much FNatic drafted complicated comps. Now, the draft is not the only thing wrong going here. Rogue improved their map movement and wave management game after game, especially regarding Malrong, who comes up MVP once again. Something flipped from game 2, and his mispositioning, weird flanks, and slow movement all went away. And he was as efficient as ever. Now, can Rogue pull off that same efficiency in the finals? Now, what is likely to be a rematch from FNatic, they just need to improve on their draft adaptation, the responses and punishments, and get Hylissang and Wonder to reel back a little bit from their forward positioning. When ahead, it looks fancy, and when behind, it looks incredibly stupid. I, for one, would like to see a finals that didn't feel so coin flippy from the LEC. Because otherwise it doesn't reflect well for whoever the representatives at MSI is going to be. Because, teams shouldn't expect a lack of adaptation or, or that the lack of them won't be a problem. Next, we get to Brazil for the CBLOL with Red Canids Kalunga versus Liberty. Both teams showed some improvements regarding vision early game. It was nice to see deeper warding, more vigilant denial vision, some proper neutral setups as the game went on. What I didn't like was seeing that their basic macro decisions got worse every game and just kind of plummeted. Picking your battles is a saying that comes to mind when I see reckless dive after pointless engage in a choke point to rush neutral contests, and for teams to go back and forth non-stop just to die in areas that are incredibly random. I don't think either team would have done well against Pain or Kabum, let alone the international stage. And it was only a little disheartening to see teams get arguably worse from game to game. I don't think either of these two teams are going to be able to make it to, the finals, let alone the international stage at MSI. Next, we head to Latin America for the LLA's Rainbow 7 versus Isurus Gaming. A lot of 5-game series. First thing to say, Isurus Gaming was a bright star for the LLA, especially when it comes to playoffs, and they don't disappoint. They played way above expectations, pushed the teams they faced to the brink, and really showed huge improvements from game to game. Froststrike, Seiya, and Jelly really navigate the map and teamfight setups fantastically. That said, there are only so many times I can write ADD gets caught, or for a matter of fact, anyone from both teams, before I think there's something going on. The vision play mid to late game is too good for players across the board just to get randomly caught over and over again. I found myself wondering how Game 3 would have gone if either team didn't miss position as hard as they currently do. We'll never know because the way that Rainbow 7 capitalized on the mistakes was just more consistent. I also want to mention, where was Sohan for the first 2 games of this series? My guy, I need to see more consistent play out of you from game 1 of these series. Seo and Adi cannot do the heavy lifting when the pressure you applied alone from game 3 and 4 would have helped navigate the fights so much more. Now, Rainbow 7 is not a team I think would do fantastically in the international stage, but this is already much better than their round 1 performance against Estral, where they will get the rematch they wanted. Next, we're off to North America with the LCS debut series. Finally. Except not so much, with 100 Thieves versus Cloud9. Holy shit, Cloud9. If you didn't salty run back game 2, this might have been a different story. If you didn't focus on the top side on a losing situation for 2 games in a row, and then ignored it in game 3 when that was your win condition you drafted. If you didn't opt into fights around areas of the map you were going to lose, the macro decisions non-stop were just mistake after mistake after mistake. And this isn't to say that 100 Thieves coasted on punishing mistakes to win. In fact, they played to their win conditions fairly well and marched on with zero needs or concerns to address as Cloud9 just didn't play to anything they needed to win their matches. Now, Game 2 was the closest and really exemplifies the situation Cloud9 was under. Nexus is easily targetable, but find targets and players who are delaying the game, lose fight, and 100 Thieves are able to focus and win what could have been an incredible punish out of them. So yikes on many bikes, guys. Yikes on so many bikes. Cloud9 gets the chance to climb back up, but I hope they really focus on how they approach their win conditions. The MVP of the series is Closer, who, for 100 Thieves, who just found fight after fight in such meticulous ways. Good job. Mwah. Nice. Now, I just wish the vision wasn't so timid from 100 Thieves, but as it goes for a prospect out of North America, this is a solid start. Next, we head towards right back to the PCS in Southeast Asia, where we go towards Beyond Gaming versus Impunity. And honestly, I'm more disappointed on how little Beyond Gaming did proactively this series. This wasn't a question of who would win, but how. And Beyond Gaming just punished poorly, thought out moves. Just punished poorly thought out moves over and over again. This was just Beyond Gaming punishing for the entire series. Now, Impunity showed very weak draft sense, which translated into similar issues with how to approach fights, neutral objectives, lane assignments, so on and so forth. Come summer, this team would need a huge overhaul in style to be able to qualify for Worlds. Beyond Gaming needs to work on vision and target selection, as they almost lost a lot of leads that way. And outside of Game 3, where the players of Impunity just look defeated to no end, gold leads just aren't ballooned at all, or barely at a rate that is needed to, be worthwhile. This felt like 3 quick games that shouldn't have been quick by the speed at which Beyond Gaming were playing. It's a kind of nothing series. Next, we head back to the Japanese LJL League for DetonationFocus Me versus Sengoku Gaming. Holy shit, DetonationFocus Me is super good. Now, I'm a little excited. I'm a bit of a fan of this team. I'm going to pump the brakes a little on my excitement. And it wouldn't surprise me, based on the bottom 4 seeds of this region, if Sengoku Gaming came back from the losers bracket for a rematch. Now, Sengoku Gaming showed clear improvement and adaptability from game to game, but the lack of attention given to Paz, as he kept getting dunked on by Evie, who applied a kind of pressure topside that loomed over Sengoku Gaming like no tomorrow, and that they couldn't answer the movements of Steel or Yarong, not to mention Yudapon firing on all cylinders during the team fights. DetonationFocus Me is a force to be reckoned with, and if the legacy regions aren't watching out, we'll probably get some games off of them fairly cleanly. And I'm already sold. Pretty convinced that this is the representatives of the LJL. Just a matter of them winning one more best of 5s in the finals. They have an excellent application of vision and information game, and a solid approach to neutral objectives. Cleanly close out the games without needing to rely on neutral objectives on top of it. And the only team to do all of those things effectively from any of the other regions so far have been T1, at least for me. The only difference is that they balloon leads from a lot of fights and aren't just suffocating gold, which is, big red flag of things they could get caught out for. DetonationFocus Me excites me every year that they, come up to playoffs, mostly because they keep improving year after year, and this year looks to be no different. Next, we head back to Turkey for the TCL with Istanbul Wildcats versus Team Aurora. You could watch any of these three stupidly one-sided games and conclude two things. One, Istanbul Wildcats have stronger players for each individual role. Two, Aurora is better at the vision game. Games like these are even harder to analyze than your typical one-sided 3-0 because any answers or map movements that could be critiqued, it's very hard to do when the Wildcats, from sheer team fighting and strong skirmish would just win fights, get pressure from that approach, and then were free to do whatever they wanted. Aurora, you guys were not fit to be facing off against a team that ran Tryndamere 3 games in a row, and not once did you choose to have madly picked teleport to have a stronger cross-map option. Like, holy crap. Like the first time with the Karma, sure, questionable, but sure. But the second time with the Jax, you could have put teleport, would have helped. But especially the third time when you get a Gnar with no teleport. A Gnar! Guys. Now, Wildcats, I want to see a better vision play. But outside of that, we'll see if this level of play sticks as you face off against Galatasaray in the finals to see who the second team to go to MSI will be. But given their slow approach to the game and inconsistent neutral play, the Wildcats seem to be the favorites so long as they get the gold lead first. Next, back to Europe at the LEC with G2 versus Misfits. And that was something, I guess. That was definitely something. Now, I'm incredibly impressed by the map movement, team fighting in general, awareness of where the win conditions are to be from G2. This was a much cleaner approach to the game. They used it at all levels, and all 5 members were playing on all cylinders today, outperforming role for role. Even Caps, who showed way more consistency this time. Thank you. Now, I'm equally disappointed in finding a Misfits who just played on the back foot and so reactively and slow to every movement around the map until it was so too late. At which point they would create a skirmish, but several thousand gold behind and then quickly lose. I do want to say that G2 are a little rushed in some aspects of their neutral setup or dives, but by the time it matters, G2 have already had some play set up cross-map or as a follow-up that does succeed. If G2 come with this form against FNatic for the semifinals, it won't matter what the difference of neutrals versus side lane pressure that we saw last time will be, as G2 will just grab everything they can and run away with it. But we'll see. It again comes up to the consistency thing. I want to see Caps be more consistent again. Just gotta keep doing it. Now, we go back to Brazil for our final playoff of the video, where we got fan favorites Pain Gaming versus Kabum Esports. Now, Kabum is a team that showed up, placed wards, had some decent engages, and punished Pain Gaming sometimes. Pain, on the other hand, came to play in a dominant fashion. Now, Pain's vision control, especially denial, enabled them to approach picks and neutral objectives around the map with a lot of efficiency. That said, their late game play tends to slow down and fumble in a lot of places. But given the way that Carioca maneuvered the map to enable Dainkedo and Weiser, really showed that they had a game plan from the start and executed it very well. Now, I think that against teams that play the laning phase better and contest neutrals in stronger fashions, Pain Gaming couldn't pull off some of the things they got away with in this series. But considering their remaining teams don't apply that kind of pressure in CBLOL, it's hard for me to see anyone other than Pain Gaming being the reps at MSI for the Brazilian League this year. But we'll see. A lot of the other teams still have chances. You know, there's still Red and Furia, and Kabum has a chance to come back from it. So we'll see. But so far, none of those teams have shown the same kind of pressure that Pain have. So, my thoughts. This is a race for second place at MSI. Up until I see anything from these teams change, or if something bizarre happens with the patch that comes up at MSI, none of the regions are showing great promise at this moment. Almost all of the regions have had a chance to play, and not much of North America has come up, but from what I saw, not a good sign, and any of the other regions that have some prospects that can compete are not to the same consistency. Now, that said, it is very notable that at the start so far of the playoffs, there were a lot of 5-game best of 5s, and now we're trending towards a lot more stomps and 3-game best of 5s. We're about a third of the way through of all of the playoff series, and about halfway through the chunk of the burst of games where there's like a whole lot of games all at once. And I do think that a lot of teams are starting to feel themselves out and are getting comfortable with how other teams are expected to play and are snowballing off of that. Not every region, but a good portion of them are finding that teams are winning game one and then continuously taking that momentum with them all the way. Now, there have been 2 reverse sweeps, so that is counter to it, but this is the early trend. The other thing I've started to notice, and I think I've hinted this from the last video, is that bot lane has become a bizarre target of bans for a lot of places that didn't need it to be. So many teams have found ways to navigate around the scaling issue of their compositions, either with any of the other roles, and when it came to the bottom lane, so long as they had a dynamic that worked well with the team, not that it didn't matter which ADC you picked, but you can't ban them all without detrimentally affecting your own composition. So you have to leave options open. And any of the current options that scale well, you could change them out. They tend to fit the same kind of function. They work well in chokeholds, have a lot of zone control, scale very well, and have a lot of burst damage all of a sudden that are enabled by resets. All except for, I would say, Xayah. And there have been some notable exceptions. Some are playing Lucian in the bottom lane instead of having their solo laners go up there. Some are playing Samira, which is an odd choice. Doesn't tend to do very well. And I've seen Ashe in Brazil for some reason, which I think is more of a tool to help with the vision game. And I think that's really good, especially if you are not as confident playing deeper, more aggressive vision. But as far as what the bot lane is going, I think what's more important is the dynamic between the support and the jungle, and how much those dynamics work in terms of your team fighting and your neutral setup. And so I wish that there would be less focus on so many bans, especially since some regions don't care to ban Caitlyn or Picket. I don't think that's a necessary ban for some places. And I think Zeri's been let through so often that it's very strange for me for there to be such a priority on the bans. To the point where I think that banning top lane and mid lane options are probably a better focus of your time during the drafting phase. But we'll see. Playoffs are very interesting as time goes on, the more concrete the idea of the patch 12.5 is. And given that probably the Vietnamese league, the VCS, is going to be playing on patch 12.6 or 12.7, uncertain, unclear yet, the 12.5 patch has been showing a lot more focus and victory out of mid lane picks. The other thing from the drafting that I've noticed are re-engage compositions, and to be more specific, compositions that both benefit from being the ones that engage on, that disengage, or counterattack. So they're the most flexible compositions. They, however, don't tend to have the most strong application of controlling neutral objectives or doing dives. Not always. Sometimes they do, but it really depends on the champion selection that you have. And it's come to my attention that most of these re-engage compositions are the most successful ones at this point. Whereas dive compositions tend to be misexecuted on a lot of places. Team fight compositions that are super simple are not picked as frequently as they probably should have. And disengage compositions are really detrimental to you. The other composition that I see a lot is a lot of siege compositions, but I think that's again due to the attribute of a lot of scaling ADCs on top of if you get a particular mid laner or top laner that's good with 1-3-1s or 1-4 setups or a LeBlanc with or a Karma. Those tend to do really great in siege setups, and siege setups are really fantastic to watch, and especially with a Jace, who's seeing a lot of proactivity. It is interesting for me to see that re-engage compositions and siege compositions have such a high success rate, despite the fact that many teams would probably benefit from simpler compositions, mostly from all across the board. As re-engage compositions, if approached properly, tend to just crumble on an engage, as they have very tight windows to be able to counter any engages. And siege compositions don't do well in neutral objectives, and so if you pick a neutral objective composition that's really good at securing that and has a really good team fight setup, great. But no team seems to be properly acting on those, or even picking Malphite more often just to counter them. But we'll see. Again, we're about a third of the way through of all the playoff games, or closer to halfway through. So things are bound to change by the time that the end of it goes, and we only have one team so far that have been qualified. Those are my thoughts, particularly on so far of everything I've seen. For those of you who are watching, what are your thoughts so far? Is there any particular team that you're excited for? Any of them that you find are favorites that I didn't see or that you may agree with? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're new, like and subscribe. For those who've been with us for a while, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And with that, this was Road to MSI 2022 Episode 4. And this is Vision Denial. My name is Sam, and I will see you all next week.